app. You can get closer with additional camera angles, driver stats, track information. You can watch live anywhere on any device. And if you want to find out more at NBCSports.com/live. So far in this practice session, the 8 chase drivers and where they're currently on the speed chart. Should Joey Logano and Carl Edwards be worried? Let's go to Marty.
Carl Edwards jumped from 36 to 24th in qualifying trim. Take a listen on the radio to what he thought about the race car.
Need to put another set of tires on her? Or something. There's something wrong with the left front.
So not good for the 19 team. And obviously with his teammates so quick, that's the other thing you got to look at. They're all in the top 10. They kind of have the same setup. So they know something not quite right with the 19 car here. Some Goodyear officials have come over to take a look and just make sure the tires are A-OK. But they are concentrating on the left front of that 19 car. And I know, Steve, it's got to be frustrating when you're trying to have a nice, slow, easy-paced day and it's just not going well like you expected it to.
Well, as we watched this 19 car make his lap, we rode along with him, and it just was dead. The front end wasn't working, Jeff. We saw he just held the wheel all the way to the left, the front not working. So he's basically, if you look at Denny Hamlin, who's second, the reason I use Denny Hamlin is Kyle Larson probably ran his one on stickers. Denny Hamlin definitely re-ran on a set of tires that ran a 1936. Carl Edwards ran a 1985. A half a second at Martinsville, that's like 4 or 5 seconds of Talladega. I mean, that is on a half-mile racetrack where we expect to see the top 24 be spread out by what, maybe 2 tenths, Jeff, 2.5 tenths. Yep. If it's a big window, he's a half a second off. Carl Edwards knows there's no way that Dave Rogers' setup is going to be a half second off. There's no way that he's a half second off as a driver. So they either have a mechanical issue or he feels, and I like his idea, staying calm. Let's just try another set of tires, make sure we don't have an issue there.
If you look at his statistics, though, Carl Edwards, this is definitely not one of his better tracks. He only has 1 top 5 here. And so a racetrack that he's been to many, many times, to only be able to muster up 1 top 5, it's not one of his better tracks.
Yeah, and when you unload, you're this far off, that doesn't help, right? Like, because we talked about it earlier. I mean, I know Carl Edwards is a confident driver. He believes in himself, but he's also he's a smart guy, too. When he looks at his stats, he only has 6 top 10s. He has to say this is a weakness for him. And then when you unload and you have all this pressure in the chase and you unload and you got people in front of you that are faster than you in race trim and you're in qualifying trim, although he's very calm externally, internally I have a feeling he's not that calm. It's he's done a good job of saying, hey, look, just be cool, just make a change here, all that's great, but internally it's very, very stressful.
Well, you see his teammate come over to check on him. That's great teammates, even with the pressure of the chase. Kenseth comes over, he looks at the timing as well, and he goes, I got to see my buddy Carl. He's 25th on the board. I got to see what's wrong. So going over there firsthand and talking to him, while there's not a lot across the track, let's ride on board. Jeff, take us in. Just see how numb the steering is in the middle of the corner.
So as he drives in turn 1, you want the car to follow the steering wheel quite simply. So as he turns the car right here in the middle of the corner, watch the wheel input he has to put in. It just doesn't turn. The car does not turn at all. And so then that hurts his rear grip as well. So again, driving into turn 3, drives in a corner, a lot of wheel right there, tons of wheel, and there's just no speed in the race car. So that is a problematic deal. There's nothing you can do about it. As a driver, when you're that tight, you can't make the car go fast. It's just you're along for the ride. And talking about Matt Kenseth going over there, he it'd be interesting to see. Like, how do you help? How do you help a guy like that? It's probably not so much, hey, I'm lifting here, I'm driving in here. It's more like, hey, man, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Like,
or reaffirming that you're right. Something has to be wrong.
Right, that's right.
Even if you don't help, I think a little bit of compassion from your teammate or caring, understanding that he's willing to get out of his car, walk down and talk to you, that's got to help.
Now, when Matt was my teammate, he would come see me just to mess with me. But that was, you don't know.
Can you reach the pedals? Are you able to push the gas pedal all the way down?
Things like that, yes. Positive reinforcement.
Right. Well, obviously, Matt wants to know what's going on because the Toyota group works together very closely, and so all eyes were on the 78 team a week ago when they had an issue, and Martrex Jr. not able to advance into the round of 8. They had engine failure, and so that situation for the 78 team has taken them out of the championship hunt. Dave.
So I talked to Cole Pert about that in the garage this morning, and I said, so what kind of week was it? He said, man, it was a tough week. Can't believe we're a non-chaser now. But the goal, of course, is to go out and win the remaining races if you can do that. He said the first thing I did when I got home was I looked in the shop and saw all that beautiful inventory we had lined up to try to go win chase races. Now, that's still the goal, but Steve, you can imagine the situation Cole is in. All that prep, and now it's just sitting there unable to get them the championship.
Well, I don't have to imagine it. I've lived it. Yeah. I was fortunate enough to take part in this type of format my final year as a crew chief, and we had a plan. We executed the plan. We had an accident in Kansas, and that basically eliminated us out of that round. We weren't able to recover. We weren't able to go to victory lane at Talladega. So we actually came here and won this race. And that was the best consolation prize I guess we could have had. And that's really what it felt like. It was great to win. And we enjoyed winning because, as you say, Jeff, winning is the ultimate goal. But really, the real goal was the championship. We just knew that goal was over.
It's going to be interesting to see how the 78 races, because the Toyota camp has all kind of bonded together and helped each other out throughout the entire season. And I was wondering how it was going to go once we got closer to the end of the season and these races really ramped up. Does the 78 go out and win this race and potentially take away an automatic bid? That possibility.
44 has hit the wall here. It's such a great run last week for Brian Scott. Had his best ever finish in second at Talladega. He's come here to the smallest track on the circuit, and you see some heavy damage to the right rear quarter panel.
Isn't that racing, though? I mean, that's the way it works. You have a great finish, and then you come back the next week, and the sport always has a way of humbling you. You see he's driving in the corner. Everything looks good there. Just never got the car turned. I don't know if it looked like to me maybe wheel hopping, just could not turn the car. Talk about wheel hop, is just a little too much rear brake. Rear tires actually start hopping on the racetrack, and you can no longer turn it. Watch the left rear tire. See if it starts to bounce up and down. Yep.
Yeah.
It's really bouncing right there. You see the perfect example of, and then he has no choice. You can either stay on the brakes and hit straight in, or get off the brakes and try to get the car to cut. Brian does a nice job of that, but he still made contact.
So they brought the 44 back into the attention of his crew, and we talk about wheel hop, we talk about the different things that take place. There's brake bias that you can adjust that on the cars. We look at the NASCAR Heat Evolution animation.
Yeah, as you go in the garage here, so you see right there, that's basically even brake front to back, the tires stop together. Well, the driver from inside the cockpit can adjust where the brake bias is. So right here, the driver cranks the rear brake into it. You see the rear brakes have much more temperature and actually put more stopping force on the car than the front, and then he has the opposite. He can put front brake in it to try to prevent that, Jeff.
That's correct. You put front brake in it. It makes the car not as loose getting into the corner. Watch the right rear corner of the 20 car. Watch it bounce up and down right there. That's the wheel hop. Now it's nothing you can do. He can't turn the car. Ends up getting into the side of the 4 car, makes the 4 car. Then the 11 car running all by himself. Wheel hops it, gets up the racetrack, runs out of racetrack, just like we saw Brian Scott. So it's a balance, and I think those balances at Martinsville are more razor edge than balances at Michigan. So a little bit too much rear brake in Michigan, plenty of racetrack, you find you can save the car. A little too much rear brake in Martinsville, the car wheel hops and you run out of space to save the race car. So it's just this racetrack puts everything on edge.
There's the damage to the right rear quarter panel. They'll go to work on that. Fastest in this practice, Kyle Larson. How about the fact that Kyle Larson has run 30 laps already in this practice session? Denny Hamlin's only run 9. Kyle Larson is fastest. Denny Hamlin is second quickest.
Yeah, I think what it's interesting too is you look at the top 6. 5 of them are non-chasers.
Yeah.
So we talk a lot about the chase guys coming here, and we all think they're the favorite by far, but this is the kind of racetrack we've seen a lot of things happen, and would this be an opportunity for a guy that hasn't made a chase to get a win? And I think there will be a chase driver. I would be really surprised if there's not a chase driver when qualifying ends today that already isn't in a hole, that's already got himself back in 16th, 18th, that's going to have to recover, because when you're off just a little bit at this racetrack, it's a huge difference and where you end up qualifying.
So we rode on board with, Carl Edwards, and we saw how his steering wheel didn't seem to want to react to the front tires. Well, look at Jimmy Johnson's. So he goes down to the corner, he's going to turn the wheel, the car's going to get to the middle of the corner, right on the curb, and he still turns the wheel a long ways, but you notice he doesn't just stay there. He kind of wiggles it back and forth a little bit. That tells me that the front's trying to work a little bit, has a little bit of freeness on exit, a little bit of freeness right there getting in, had a little correction.
And I have a feeling that's more freeness than he wanted. Jimmy Johnson likes a free race car, but still moved up the board a little bit at a 40. Moved him up to 10th.
So let's put that in perspective. A 40, 8/100ths off at 10th. That's why we continue to go back to Carl Edwards, who's a half a second off. Because this is less than a 10th, and it's 10 spots. So, Carl Edwards has a lot to find with that race car.
Well, he ran a 40, and he's 10th. He was a 32.
Right.
Pretty close.
Yeah. Let's go back into the garage and Marty.
And let's chat with Brian Scott and find out exactly what happened there. Looks like the damage is fixable. That's the good news on the right rear of the 44 car. What did happen, Brian?
I just wheel hopped going into turn 3. Driver mistake, all my fault. I hate it for these guys. Brand new car here this weekend, new short track car. Didn't want to have that. Definitely not what I wanted to happen in practice. It's just part of it when you come here to Martinsville. It's hard to get heat and everything, and I was probably a little overly ambitious going into turn 3 there the first time, and didn't warm up my brakes properly, and just started wheel hopping and got into the marbles and couldn't keep it off the wall. These guys will fix it. We'll maybe get back out of there and practice, get another mock qualifying run, but real happy to have American Red Cross on board, and I think we'll be all right for qualifying. I just got to do a better job getting heat and everything.
I was going to ask you about that cool paint scheme this weekend with the American Red Cross, Brian.
Yeah, I guess I need some of their assistance right now to get this thing back together. Just real proud to have them on board and all the work that they're doing to help the families and everybody affected by all the destruction of Hurricane Matthew. Just encourage everybody to text Matthew to 90999, make a $10 donation to help the American Red Cross.
Certainly this area, Rick, and eastern North Carolina, very affected by Hurricane Matthew, so cool to see the petty guys with the American Red Cross on the car this weekend. They are going to fix this car up and get them back out, hopefully, in this practice session.
Thanks, Marty. Some of the worst flooding that Eastern Carolina has seen in quite some time. And it's Kyle Busch, little loose race car there as he catches it coming out of the turn.